Yosef Tunkel. Yosef Tunkel, 1881, August 9, 1949, was a Jewish Belarusian American writer of poetry and humorous prose in Yiddish, commonly known by the pen name Der Tunkeler, or the Dark One in Yiddish. Biography. Born into the family of a poor teacher in Babruysk in Belarus, then part of the Russian Empire, Tunkel was a sickly child whose drawing ability prompted charitable members of the community to send him to art school in Vilna. He finished his studies in 1899 and, too short-sighted to be a painter, turned to writing. His poetry was first published in Der Yud, Warsaw in 1901, and from then on his poems, satires, drama, and children's stories appeared in Yiddish publications throughout Europe and North America. Between 1906 and 1910, he traveled to the United States, where he started the humorous journal Der Kibitzer, continued for 2 decades under the title Der Grosser Kunz. Moving to Warsaw in 1911, he wrote for Der Moment, editing its humor pages, Der Krummer Spiegel, or The Crooked Mirror. He spent World War I in Ukraine, mainly in Kiev and Odessa. In the early 20s, he adapted several works of German poet Wilhelm Busch, Helmbusch, 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 Wilhelm Busch. When the Warsaw Cabaret Azazel opened in 1925, Der Tunkeler's writings were part of the repertoire. His works were staged in Lodz and the Warsaw Cabaret Theatre Sambatine, which opened in 1927, as well. In 1931, he visited what was then the British Mandate of Palestine. The outbreak of World War II found him in Belgium, from which he escaped into France only to be arrested by the Vichy authorities. Escaping in 1941, he managed to find his way to the U.S. once more, where he wrote for the major New York Yiddish daily, the Jewish Daily Forward, despite failing health. He died there in 1949. Throughout his life, numerous collections of his work were published in Warsaw, Kiev, and New York. He is remembered as one of the Yiddish language's outstanding humorists to this day. Der Tunkeler, Iosef Tunkel Bibliography. Published by Roman Tunkel. Distant relatives of Tunkeler. Each statement of article is supported by photocopy of corresponding document. A more detailed and accurate Russian version of Der Tunkeler biography is located at Ru. Tunkel, Iosef. Chronology. 1878, Iosef Tunkel is born in Babruysk. He was born into a poor family, and his father was a poor melamed. As a child, he suffers from illnesses and is lame. At age 15, he travels to Vilnius, where he studies at the Trutnev's art school. 1899, completes his education at the Vilnius Trutnev's art school. 1899-1901, due to extreme nearsightedness, he abandons a career in art and instead devotes himself to literature. He wanders from city to city pawning his stories and returns occasionally to Babruysk. Publishes his first poems in Joseph Luria's Yiddish newspaper Der Yud the Jew. 1906-1910, travels to the United States and lives in New York. Founds 2 successful and long-lasting humor magazines, Der Kibitzer, The Kibitzer, and Die Grosser Kunz, The Big Stick. 1910, returns to Babruysk due to family emergency. 1911, moves to Warsaw. Becomes a regular contributor to the magazine Der Moment. Starts using the pseudonyms Koschek and Der Tunkeler. Eventually, Iosef Tunkel becomes the editor of the weekly humor supplement called Der Krummer Spiegel, The Bent Mirror. 1914-1918, during World War I, Iosef Tunkel returns to Babruysk and from there to Kiev and Odessa, where he publishes several short works. Returns to independent Poland after the war. Returns to Der Moment, while occasionally writing for other newspapers such as Der Haint and the Volkszeitung, People's Paper, under the pseudonym Androgynous. 1920s, publishes numerous books, plays, feuilletons, parodies, and humorous articles. Often personally acts out his works on stage as he travels around the country. Travels to Israel. is feted by the Hebrew Writers' Union and Kam Nachman Bialik, who declares himself as a great admirer of Der Tunkeler's works. He subsequently writes his first travel narrative based on his experiences in the Holy Land. 1932-33, Iosef Tunkel travels to the United States to visit his brothers and old friends as well as to gather material for a travel narrative. He stays in Springfield, where his brother Alex and sister-in-law Rose live. 1934. Travels to the Soviet Union to gather material for a subsequently published travel narrative. Lives in Paris for some time. 1939 travels to Belgium to collect material for another travel narrative when the Germans invade Poland and World War II breaks out. Illegally crosses the border into France with a group of Jewish refugees. Due to his lame leg, he is captured by the French police and sent to a detention center for foreign Jews in Strasbourg. In the camp, he befriends the Parisian novelist W. Wawrinka, miraculously escapes the camp and somehow finds his way to the United States in April 1941. He resides permanently in New York and quickly finds employment with Der Vorwärts, the New York Yiddish daily newspaper. 1943 publishes the autobiographical work Goals, Keesalbum van een Vluchteling Exile, the writings of an exile, about his experiences in Belgium and France in an attempt to shed light on the plight of European Jewry. 1948 Tunkel publishes his last book, Der Größer Genitz oder ein Tag in New York, The Great Genius or An Annoying Day in New York. His last work of literature is an article for the Lithuanian Yisker book, like the chapter of Vilna, in My Life, which is published posthumously in 1951. His physical health shattered by his experiences in the French camps, he spends the last several years of his life ill and nearly blind. 1949 On August 9, 1949 14 Av. 5709 Iosef Tunkel dies and is interred in the New Mount Carmel Cemetery in Ridgewood, Queens, New York. Collections Humoristische Bibliothek 5 Vol. Vol 1 Gelechter Zat Vol. 2 Ik lach van Eich Vol 3 Myten Kop Arop Huck Articles Das Capital Vilna in Main Lebanon Light, Dr. Mendel Sudarsk and Uriah Katzenellenbigen eds. Volume 1, 1951, pp. 1279-1289. Sikrones and Bobruis, Sefer Sakaran Lekihilat Bobruis Q Venoto, Yehuda Slutsky, ed. Volume 2, 1967, p. 538-9. Translations Bush, Wilhelm, 1832-1908. Natal und Mottel Farlag Levin Epstein Bros. and Partners, Warsaw, 1928, first edition, 1920. 74 pp. Walouse. Nippel El Nile. Bush, Wilhelm, 1832-1908. Thigh Schlang, Farlag Levin Epstein Bros. and Partners, Warsaw, 1921. Second edition, 1928, 22 pp. Walouse. Nippel El Nile. Bush, Wilhelm, 1832-1908. Koppel und die Gents, Farlag Levin Epstein Bros. and Partners, Warsaw, 1921. 14 pp. Walouse. Nippel. Mand, Thomas, Jacob on Esau. Newspapers and journals. Der Kibitzer Monatlicher Illustrator Journal Far Humor, Witz und Kibitz, Vol 1-8, New York, 1908-1914. Walouse. Hocknippel H. Der Größer Kunst, a journal for humor, Witz und Satire. 12/15/1908-9/9/1927, New York. H. Ilp. Der Kromer sh Vigil, editor of the weekly humor supplement for the magazine Der Moment. References to Iosef Tunkel. Der Tunkeler in Ravitch, Melek, Main Lexicon My Dictionary, Vol. Roman II Northern Printing on Stationery, Montreal, Canada, 1945. Tunkeler, Der in Zilberquade, Zalman, Lexikon von Yiddish Theater, Dictionary of Yiddish Theater Vol. Roman II Libris Publishers, Warsaw, 1934, pp. 865-866. Tunkel, Iosef der Tunkeler in Raskin, Scholl Lexikon von der Neuer Jiddischer Literatur Dictionary of the New Yiddish Literature, Vol. I. Marston Press, New York, 1961, pp. 4751. Tunkel Iosef in Encyclopedia Judaica, p. 1451. Tunkel, Iosef der Tunkeler in Landman, Isaac ed. The Universal Jewish Encyclopedia, Vol. 10, Katav Publishing House, Inc., New York, 1969, pp. 324-5. Roback, A. A. Curiosities of Yiddish Literature, Sky Art Publishers, Cambridge, Massachusetts, 1933, p. 62, 192. Der Tunkeler J. Tunkel ranks as the best parodist in Yiddish. p. 62. Roback, A. A. The Story of Yiddish Literature, Yiddish Scientific Institute, New York, 1940, p. 353. Fainsilver, Merman Lillian, The Taste of Yiddish, South Brunswick Publishers, New York, 1970, p. 53, 187. Liptzin, Sol, A History of Yiddish Literature, Jonathan David Publishers, New York, 1972, p. 274. Sadin, Dov Kerat Agazimo Aleph Bidikov, V. Bidika, Nut Bowl or 1001 Jokes, M. Newman Publishers, Tel Aviv, 1953, 5713, p. 213-4. Gold, David L. Towards a Critical Edition of Yosef Tunkel's Nottel und Mottel, Jewish Linguistic Studies, 1989, pp. 165-173. Shaintuk, Yakil, Ha Bikarit, Ha Kevratit Tarbutit by K.H. Dav, Ha Humoristium Shell der Tunkeler, The Sociocultural Criticism in der Tunkeler's Humorous Writings, The Ninth World Congress for Jewish Studies, 1985, pp. 457-460. Shaintuk, Yakil and Arain Zu der Sugia Humor in der Yiddischer Literatur under Tunkeler, in Kabakov, Jacob, Jewish Book Annual, Vol. 44, New York, 1986-1987, 5747. Chathelf Yehuda, Ha-Itanat Ha-Yehudit, she hated the Jewish press that was Ha-Agad Ha-Alami Shel Ha-Itanim Ha-Yehudim. Tel Aviv, 1973, pp. 86, 88, 91, 95, 111, 117, 123, 163, 195. Davidin, Yakov, Lapich v. Til Eulensch Vigil in Barbruiskiasker Book, Tel Aviv, pp. 773-80 cpp. 775, 779. Flushnevsky, M. Yosef Tunkel der Tunkeler, Sein Letztjahren in New York. Joseph Tunkel der Tunkeler, His Last Years in New York, Acts 3000, 262 1969 36 39.